No.
Welcome everyone, and thank you for being here. First item of the evening is the public forum. Public forum is an opportunity for individuals to speak to the City Council on any city-related issues, except those issues which have already been heard by a hearing official or are on the agenda of the public hearing. Each person will have 2 minutes to speak. When you come to the podium, please give your name, city of residence, and whether any resident and ward is known. The timer light indicates the time of your speech. The yellow light will come on when you have 15 seconds to complete your comments. The red light indicates the end of 3 minutes. We have 12 people signed up to speak. We'll try to do our work.
How's that? I think that's okay now. Okay? All right. So Laura Henkes first, followed by Courtney Jolly.
Okay. Dear City
Thank you.
Council of Eugene, my name is Lars. I live in Eugene, and I'm here with a group of UO students. And we have identified a transportation problem, which is the current classification of skateboards in Eugene. Yeah, you might not notice this problem if you don't live in the campus area, but it's a problem we deal with every day, and I'm just going to tell you a little bit about it. In our opinion, the current classification of skateboarders as pedestrians leads to a chaotic traffic situation, especially around campus. And yeah, in Eugene, skateboarders are classified as pedestrians because their feet touch the ground, and this is why they have to use the sidewalk. Yeah, but in our opinion, skateboarders shouldn't be on the sidewalk because they move faster than pedestrians. They have a hard time stopping, and also the sidewalk in Eugene is full of cracks, so it's kind of hard for them to commute. So we think this is an issue, and now I'm going to show you some evidence we gathered during the process. First of all, we went to the Eugene Police Department and talked to an officer who works there, and she told us that the traffic situation around 13 and older is kind of chaotic, and that there's a lot of confusion because there are cyclists, skateboarders, pedestrians, and they're everywhere, and nobody knows what's going on. After that, we went to the Eugene Transportation Planning Department and talked to the bicycle coordinator of Eugene, Lee Shoemaker, and he told us that the number of accidents involving cars and skateboards has increased over the years, but unfortunately he didn't have any evidence, any statistics to show us, which is why we decided to do our own survey on the campus. And the survey included as well staff members as students, and it was skateboarders and non-skateboarders. So we got over 130 responses back, and the 2 most important results were that 69% of respondents think that skateboarders should be classified as cyclists and not as pedestrians, so like more than 2/3. And the second result was that 79% of respondents think that skateboarders should use the bike lane instead of the sidewalk.
Could you say that again, that last statement?
78% of respondents think that skateboarders should use the bike lane instead of the sidewalk, which they're doing right now.
Okay.
Yeah, so that is basically the problem and the evidence we gathered. And now Courtney is going to tell you what we're planning to do about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Courtney Jolly is next, followed by Judy Horseman.
Okay, so I'm Courtney Jolly, and I also am a student at the University of Oregon, so I'm following what he says. And so we propose Eugene progress to the current time and pass this new legislature that can regulate the use of skateboards in Eugene in a more realistic and a more enforceable way. The ordinance we would like to pass will be modeled after Title 16 in the Portland City Code, which reclassifies skateboarders as cyclists. This will benefit in Eugene. We feel that this will benefit Eugene in ways such as it will provide a more suitable place for skateboarders to ride. We also feel it will increase the safety of walking commuters, especially around campus. We feel that it will create laws that will actually be enforceable, unlike the ones now, considering that they're unrealistic and that the sidewalks aren't up to par with being able to ride, so students are having to ride on the road, which the police officers know, so they can't really enforce them not to at this point. We also feel that it will make skateboarders more lawful, because they actually have rules to abide by. In the end, we hope to create a more comfortable environment in commuting. So to conclude, I'd like to leave you with this. Spring is right around the corner, and once the sun comes out, we'll see a sudden increase in skateboarders around Eugene. More skateboarders means more potential accidents. So we ask you to pass this ordinance soon and progress Eugene to the current time. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Judy Horseman, followed by Robin Bloomgarden.
Hi, my name is Judy Horseman. I live in Ward 3. I'm a member of the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee, although I am speaking on my own behalf tonight. And I just wanted to urge you to accept the pedestrian and bicycle master plan and direct City Manager Reese to incorporate it into the TSP update. As you know, the bike ped plan contains important elements that will help us implement the Climate, Energy, and Action Plan and the Envision Eugene. And I think future economic and environmental conditions are going to force us to reduce our reliance on the single-occupant automobile, and improving our pedestrian and bicycle systems will provide our citizens with both more choice and healthier transportation options. And also, increasing the number of pedestrians and bicycles may reduce the wear and tear on our streets, because we'll reduce automobiles and therefore might be able to save some money on street repair. Of course, implementation of the plan requires funding. Our transportation staff are excellent at obtaining grant funds, which are highly competitive and time-consuming. But I think we also need local sources of funding. So one thing I would encourage you to do is reinstitute the sidewalk infill program. Gaps in our sidewalks are a significant deterrent to walking. Currently, there's no money in the general fund for sidewalk infill and maintenance. So perhaps there are other funding sources under city control that could be tweaked to be able to include some pedestrian projects. I also urge you to support a new street repair bond measure that would include money for active transportation, and that will help us move towards our goal of increasing walking and biking. And finally, I would encourage you and city staff to rethink the definition of collectors and arterials to include streets that have high volumes of bicycles, so that we also look at bicycle collectors and arterials. Thank you.
Thank you. Robin Bloomgarden is next. Robin? No? That's Joe. That's not Rob. I know. So I'll go on to Irene Cardenas, and then you, Joe.
I'm Irene Cardenas. I must correct a statement I made previously. The final DSM-5 is set to release May 2013. Now, about homelessness. Many homeless are refugees from social services that disable them with traumatizing treatments, rather than offering treatments like brainwave balancing from brainstatetech.com that actually correct trauma patterns. Now, I'm going to be quoting scripture. People may analyze it academically as literature. I support people's right to spiritual or non-spiritual beliefs. God on the streets. When I became homeless in 2010, it felt like jumping off a cliff into a dark void where a divine hand of white light caught me. People find God on the streets because God is all that's left with them. The Book of Light says, God is harmony between all things. I put my faith in that harmony, setting out to do what's best for it. I have always had what I needed. The Journey Home by Cryon suggests following one's spiritual intuition is like using a map that shows only where one may go from the present. This reminds me of what Jesus said, do not worry about tomorrow. Each day has enough trouble of its own. Many homeless live day to day. They live in nature like Jesus did. He taught near hills and lakes. He slept on the outskirts of town. He didn't jump to do his mother's bidding, Matthew 12:46. His family said he is out of his mind. He said, "The Son of Man has no place to lay his head," as if the spirit that animates human life is not fully integrated into matter on earth, into society. To integrate the homeless into the socioeconomic structure, they need a place to lay their heads without risking arrest. They need supplies to cultivate art, music, and gardens, and easy ways to sell their wares at farmers' markets. Living in the flow of the present amid the harmonious biorhythms emitted by nature envelops the homeless in a structure as well ordered as sine waves. The rigid policies of overly structured institutions violate the boundaries of this flow for people who need high levels of harmony. In some cities, churches help establish homeless camps. Churches have strong protections under the law for land use. Many cities have faith-based places that shelter almost anyone in any condition. In Eugene, many homeless are out in the rain. Who can accept liability for them? Jesus can, along with anyone who aligns with the harmony among all life. Jesus compared giving to the poor to entering heaven, enveloping both parties in the harmony that sustains all life. Jesus cited this scripture: "The stone the builders rejected has become the capstone, and it is marvelous in our eyes." Some wise people look at populations rejected from conventional structures
Thank
and
you.
see a cornerstone from which marvelous opportunities can grow. Thank you.
Thank you. Joe Tyndall is next, followed by Kayla Schott-Bressler.
Good evening. My name's Joe Tyndall. And I guess in the last 2 weeks since the exclusion zone was extended, it's pretty clear that the police are on a rampage. If you talk to people living in the homeless staying in the downtown, that's what they'll tell you. In particular, we've had, I guess, an incident with one of the officers who at this point appears to have perjured himself on his reports. There are 4 witnesses who will oppose or contradict what he has written. Okay, so it's kind of convenient that the city dropped the charges against Allie for her criminal trespass, because that would have forced him into court and into conflict with those witnesses. So the question is, what is this city going to do about a police officer who has perjured himself? And then there's a couple things coming up further down the road. I mean, one is I guess there's a proposal coming up about dogs in the downtown. And essentially the problem with the police harassing the homeless has essentially created an arms race in the downtown. If you're trying to sleep and the police are going to come and hassle you, what's the solution? Cause and effect. Get a dog. Now, are they going to get Fluffy, the one that comes up and wags his tail and wants to be petted? No, they're going to get a pit bull. So if the police are going to harass the homeless for trying to sleep, they are going to try to defend themselves by getting vicious dogs. Probably not the best idea, but we have effectively created an arms race down there. Okay, so as long as the exclusion zone continues and as long as the police are on the rampage, you will get more nasty dogs in the downtown. Next thing is we have budget issues. And we have a development that wants $16 million worth of tax breaks. Okay? Somehow that just doesn't make sense to me at all. We have other businesses who are trying to compete, and by giving that $16 million, you have unleveled the playing field dramatically and sent a lot of money out of the community. So, again, this will be coming up, but I am opposed to that development. And finally, although we haven't actually gotten good numbers out of the police, we have had a couple of the officers on the police force indicate that while the Occupy camp was open, the crime rate in the downtown dropped by 90%. So it's just, we haven't got, like I say, we don't have good numbers, but that's what the police are telling us. So it seems as though the camp worked in reducing crime in the downtown and is a good alternative to the exclusion zone. Now the problem with the camp is that we have this task force, and every time the camp gets brought up, it kind of disappears from the next week's minutes. We put it in, it disappears, we put it in, it disappears. There is a pattern there, and that is the solution. Thank you.
Kayla Schott-Bressler is next, followed by James Fisa.
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me okay? Great.
Speak
My
up.
name is Kayla Schott-Bressler. I manage policy and advocacy initiatives at the Lane Coalition for Healthy Active Youth, or ELCHE. Many of you know us, but for those of you who don't, ELCHE is a nonprofit organization that works to prevent childhood obesity here in Lane County by advocating for community-level changes that make it easier for families to eat healthy and be physically active. Our work ranges from supporting programs like Safe Routes to School to working with the City of
You
Eugene.
need to speak up just a little bit more.
Sure.
if you
Working
can.
with the City of Eugene on healthy vending and snack policy at recreation sites. With the bicycle and pedestrian master plan on the agenda this evening, we thought it might be an appropriate time to introduce our work and our point of view to the council. We believe public health must be considered at all stages of the policymaking process if we are going to have a truly sustainable Eugene. Similar to city leadership on tobacco control, we must now become exemplary in our approach to preventing chronic disease resulting from an environment that fails to support healthy diet and physical activity. The costs of these chronic diseases are upwards of $780 million a year in Oregon, and over $1 billion a year if you include indirect costs such as lost productivity and comorbidities. Even worse, astronomically high numbers of Oregonians are at risk for these devastating diseases, and they disproportionately afflict low-income and minority populations. Supporting good health is not only critical for the long-term economic success of the city, but critical for promoting equity as well. While this sounds grave, it is not insurmountable. There are many steps that can be taken at the city level to make it easier for families to make healthy choices, such as prioritizing active transportation and incentivizing healthy food resources, to name just two. Many states and cities are beginning to use the health in all policies approach, looking at public and private sector policymaking through a health lens and measuring decision-making against its impact on human health. The city implements a triple bottom line framework to reach its sustainability goals. We believe that in order to truly achieve these goals, the council must bring health and health equity into its discussion of sustainability. This is especially important when looking at issues relating to land use and zoning, economic development, food policy, tax policy, and transportation planning. We at ELCHE are happy to be a resource and a partner with you in efforts to address environmental influences on health. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Next is James Fisa, followed by Kimberly Gladen. James? Not here. Kimberly Gladen. Followed by James Scott.
Hello, I'm Kimberly Gladen. I live in the downtown. I'm going to have to get a map to find out what ward I'm in. Well, I'd like to start out by saying, what a lovely night, isn't it, to be homeless in a tent? Wouldn't this be just great weather to be out there? Although I am in favor of you expanding the camping policy to allow tents and to allow more homeless camping. It's badly needed. However, I have to say the tent is the least we can do, and I mean that literally, the least we can do. I'm very disappointed in this community. In December, when St. Vincent de Paul asked for vehicles, little campers, maybe a pickup with a little trailer on the back or something, I really didn't see this town jumping to get people at least that. Tents in this climate tend to be wet, damp, and moldy. I have permanent respiratory problems from my time living homeless in a tent here when I first came to Oregon. And for a town where I see Autzen Stadium fill up with a whole bunch of Party Palace RVs, I mean big deluxe models, I think having a few used RVs that maybe Duck fans or our millionaire coach or maybe some of those errant football players who think drinking, smoking, and getting DUIs is the way to go and the way to be a good leader, maybe they could have done some fundraising, maybe got some trailers for them. For a town that parties so much that the reputation brings people here to party, transients, runaways, etc., I think we could do a lot better for the homeless. And I think that it's unfortunate, too, that the activists in our community don't do more to support getting that shelter built. Instead, they seem more bent on causing trouble in the downtown and getting arrested, although they don't do this over by campus. None of these antics happen in front of the Nike building or over by the school, just the downtown. It's a nice, easy place to target because we try to include everybody until you really act out bad enough that you're making it miserable for everybody. But the antics of activists coming down and repeatedly trying to get arrested and causing problems really puts a stress on the low-income people and the low-income workers and the small, unique businesses. Because unlike other cities, our downtown has one-of-a-kind businesses and not the chain stores or box stores of other towns. They're outside, and of course they never get touched. But let's get back to the homeless. I would like to see you go ahead and expand that policy, but I'd like to see a more concerted effort in this city to get some trailers, maybe something a little more substantial. In the meantime, while you're working on getting the nonprofits set up and getting the donations that this community obviously has, looking at the multi-million-dollar centers for welcoming rich alumni and for athletes to study, there obviously is plenty of money. It's just people have to get their act together, walk their talk, and get the donations, and forget about making trouble. I mean, if you spent half the time raising funds and getting those nonprofits together as people do trying to cause trouble in this town, that shelter would already be built.
James Scott is next, followed by Ali Valkyrie. James Scott?
Do I have to push a button or anything?
Nope, just speak up. Give your name, please.
The reason I'm here tonight
Can you
is,
give your name, please?
James Scott.
Thank you.
I have property located at the corner of Roosevelt and North Seneca, the address 280 North Seneca. We have, in the last, I think it's been about 2 years or so, we've got a new building that's gone up across the street. It's called Six Robles. I'm sure you're familiar with it if you drive by that area at all. It's an unimproved street, basically. It has been an unimproved street for the past, well, since 1940, I think. And we haven't had any problems with the street. We've maintained the street, put in, covered up the potholes and stuff like that. But since the new building has went in, we're unable to get rid of the water. The city permitted the building, put in a driveway, and put in a sidewalk on the opposite side of the street from the place that I live on. And so when they put in the sidewalk, they did not allow for any drainage. They covered up the drainage ditch that was there, blocking off all the water that's coming down the street. So what's happened now is that we have a large lake. If anyone would like to drive down there on a rainy day, I challenge you to get through that lake. Okay? Now, I'm more than happy to maintain the street, but I cannot maintain the street without some kind of drainage. And when I called the Public Works, I was shuffled around quite a bit. Eventually, I was told just to dig a ditch on the other side of the street, which I'll be happy to do, but if I do that, I'm going to dig up your sidewalk, along with several of E-Web accesses there, and the new person's driveway, which would probably not be, make them too happy. So I don't know what power you guys have to figure out that problem. Obviously, you have city planners. They probably should have looked at this problem ahead of time, rather than, put their thinking caps on first. Would have been a good idea. Anyway, that's my issue that I have. I did call the mayor's office and I put in a complaint about it. And the CEO from Six Robles called and said he was concerned about it also. So if you would like any of those, if you'd like to talk to any of the owners on the street, be fine. I have their names and numbers too if you want to contact me. Thank you very much. I have a question. Can a person that enters late sign up to speak? No? Okay. Thank you.
Ali Valkyrie is next, followed by Kathy Ging.
Ali Valkyrie, Board 1. When I was a kid, I knocked the neighbor's bird bath over, and it broke, and like many kids would, I lied about it. And I probably would have gotten away with it if the kid across the street hadn't seen it too. And I got in trouble twice, once for doing something stupid, and once for lying about it. And, if it's an important lesson. The lesson I feel, as Joe's pointed out, that certain police officers in this town need to learn. I wasn't trying to get arrested, contrary to what some people believe, but as you all know, I was cited for trespass after touching a wall with my toe. I was not given a verbal warning. I was simply cited. Now, it's obvious to me, I wasn't cited because the officer thinks I was breaking the law. I was cited because the officer thinks I'm a pain in the ass. And I can understand this, putting myself in his shoes. We're on two sides of a very complicated issue. That did not give anyone the right to abuse their power. And that's what happened. And it was obvious that that was happened. And so the charges were dropped. And then I was given a copy of the police report that states that not only did I sit down, which I did not do, but that I didn't move when I was asked to move. Now, on one hand, the charges are dropped. On the other hand, this is a police report where if I wasn't me, and this was being prosecuted, and there were no witnesses, someone would be found guilty based on these allegations, because that is a violation of the law. The law says that one is trespassing when they remain unlawfully after being asked to leave. I did not do that. I have 4 witnesses that can prove this officer is lying. But my problem is that 300 people were cited for trespass in Eugene last year. And I'm sure that if we go through it, a preponderance of them either pled guilty or were found guilty. I would like to know how many of them were convicted on the word of an officer who insisted he gave a verbal warning. This is a jailable offense. This is an excludable offense. And if an officer was willing to lie in my case, how many other times have officers lied? I'd really like to know. I really think that in the interest of justice and accountability, there needs to be a complete review of all criminal trespass citations written in the downtown public safety zone for the past year. I know people personally who have been found guilty without being given a verbal warning. Again, this is a jailable offense. It is being used to target people. And I have a lying police report to prove it. And I would really like to know what the city's going to do about it. It's that lesson from being a kid. If you do something stupid, you don't lie about it to cover it up, especially when 4 people can counter otherwise. I'm really disappointed in the EPD. I'm not disappointed about the trespass ticket. I get that. I'm a pain in the ass. I'm disgusted that the officer chose to lie in the face of all the publicity. Thank you.
Last up is Kathy Ging.
Kathy Ging, Zelenka's ward. Please let us vote on the Capstone project. Overtaxed Eugenians may not vote for future levies if this $16 million tax break passes. 1,200 students in the proposed Capstone project is not a good idea. I was skeptical about Capstone's proposal for the 1,200 students downtown, a great deal for developers, but it lacks a benevolent vision for us. Would it provide vital elements to improve our city, including enhanced quality of life, not only for downtown residents, but for others? Hearing many comments and questions yesterday at the City Club Downtown Neighbors meeting, I was perturbed by the great number that were underwhelmed with this proposal. Please have staff summarize comments. I assume the downtown neighbors, especially those within hearing range, which were referred to as just orange dots of multifamily dwellings today by your city planner, had tentatively approved the idea, including a proposed $16 million tax break. But listening to comments such as concerns about how improbable it would be to keep all 1,200 from playing loud music day and night, I heard one comment that neighbors, including many seniors, disabled, and low income in the neighboring high-rises, would need to close the windows in the summer, a concern that I have, having 3 sets of college students next to me. I heard concern also about sharing sidewalks from people with walkers when youthful bicyclists already laugh at seniors when they say, "Please step aside." I am here with an alternative suggestion. Consider supporting developers to envision a building that would have architectural character mentioned as missing in the current design, and that comment received the greatest applause, and a different ownership format. 7 people signed up to have an informal discussion about the proposal I outlined. My proposal, an owner-occupied condominium high-rise. Almost 50% of Eugene residents are renters. An ideal opportunity to provide stable housing for those who have missed the American dream due to job loss, downward economy, self-employment, income. Seniors and boomers want to downsize and ask if there are contemporary condos downtown. There are few or none. A comment yesterday reiterated the boomers have money and would be ideal buyers of condos. Students also welcome. Financing, how do this? A survey of need could be done. Although it may be difficult for banks to finance condos now, a consortium of investors, financial institutions, and those with IRAs earning minimal interest at present could provide the funding. It is also possible to do pre-sales where people put earnest money down, and when you get the critical mass, you start the construction. 40 to 50-year mortgages with no prepayment penalty could be offered, which is done in Switzerland and other areas. Widening the borrow pool. When eWeb raised money for its riverfront building, they sold out the $500 mini bonds within 3 weeks, and then later other bonds out of state. Cooperating with developers like Masters, with or without Capstone and other housing agencies could accomplish this goal. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to close the public hearing. Thank everyone for coming. Counselor Farr, are you going to take the lead on this skateboard ordinance?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Yep. Okay. So we'll.
Yes, I will be. Thank you, Mayor.
Mm-hmm.
I will be asking councilors to consider a work session on the skateboard ordinance.
Thank you. And then the folks who came about the Viking Ped Plan, I just wanted you to know that going after some money for the Bike and Ped Plan is in our United Front agenda that we're going to be trying to get federal money for this year. So we'll see. We'll see. I appreciate all the comments about the needs of the homeless. Elche, I know we are using health as one of the things that we're looking at. In fact, I think we were one of the first communities that did some work around health when it came to our land use and transportation planning. And just for Kathy, just wanted to say that there is some apartments planned for the Taco Time building and there are almost completed apartments for the Park Blocks apartments going in on Pearl next to Full City Coffee. And unless things have changed, there is very little funding for condos at present, and although there seems to be an appetite for it, but the banks are not feeding that appetite yet, apparently. Okay, Councilor Ortiz.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to thank everybody for coming down. I don't know, I can't tell by my mute button if it's on or not, so if it's not, I apologize. I just wanted to comment on the Seneca Street, North Seneca.
Yeah.
The mayor had gone down.
Took pictures.
Took pictures and sent it to us, and I'm glad that she reached out to that community. There's a lot of our streets that are unimproved in our neck of the woods, and city manager knows how we feel about this, and he's looking into seeing if we can get that on in the cycle of getting something done. The drainage does add another dimension to it, but hopefully we'll come to some resolution. So next winter, hopefully, no guarantees, we'll have something done on that.
Councilor Poling.
Thank you. I'd just like to thank everybody for coming out tonight in this fine weather that we're having to give testimony. I'm actually not going to speak to any of the comments that were made at the public hearing or public forum this evening, but I would just like to let people know that during the past week, I have received dozens of emails and numerous phone calls thanking me for the actions that I took on the Budget Committee last week of putting a motion out to return $65,000 to the Animal Services through our budget process. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to get to all of the emails that I receive from all over the county, but I would just like to let them know that, let the people know that I do appreciate their comments, their emails. And every one of these people that sent a comment to me or called me either work for or volunteer for animal rescue groups, Green Hill, LCAS, something of that nature. And they are the ones in this county that need the thanks, not me. They're the ones that are doing the work. I do volunteer work for a rescue group, nationwide rescue group, and I know how difficult it is for people to spend their time and their money to help the animals, the pets in our community that are neglected, that are abused. I have two rescue animals of my own that were from abused homes, and I know how they respond and react to negative behaviors, and it's a difficult thing that these people are doing, fostering these animals. I'd also like to thank my fellow counselors and Budget Committee members that voted for that intended motion. It means a lot to me because of my love for animals, and it means a lot to the people in our community that do this work for animal services, as well as the animals in the community that need the services that we can provide. Thank you.
Thanks, George. Councilor Farr.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Regarding alleys and unimproved streets, back in the mid-90s, we made a conscious decision, budgetary decision, to abandon annual maintenance, regular maintenance in the budget on alleys and streets. And my feeling is it is something that at some point we need to revisit, just a certain amount of money in the budget for annual maintenance to prevent streets and alleys from becoming as dilapidated as Seneca and others around town are. A little bit of annual maintenance may prevent the 3-foot deep potholes such as the ones that we have encountered on Seneca and on Hamilton and other streets around town. Thank you.
Before we move on to the next part of our agenda, City Manager, are we going to be able to take a look at that drainage issue on Seneca?
Yes, we'll have Public Works take a look at it as part of their regular assessment.
Okay. We're going to do the consent calendar now, and so I'm going to ask Council President to put a motion on the table.
I move to approve the items on the consent calendar.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Questions, discussion? Seeing none, would you please vote? Six in favor, none in opposition. It passes. Thank you. Then we're going to go on to item number 3. That's the Eugene Pedestrian and Bike Master Plan. City Manager.
Pedestrian and Bicycle Master Plan process was initiated in 2010 to provide the City of Eugene with the projects and policies necessary to create a first-class city for bicycling and walking over the next 20 years. The plan includes projects to encourage active transportation like cycle tracks and bicycle boulevards, in addition to completing gaps in the pedestrian network. City staff is asking the Council to accept the plan as an interim step until it can be adopted as a component of the Transportation System Plan when it is completed in 2013.
Thank you, City Manager. Council President.
I move to accept the Eugene Pedestrian and Bicycle Master Plan prepared pursuant to ODOT TGM grant number 26778 and direct the City Manager to integrate the plan into the proposed TSP update.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Councilor Zelenka.
I just wanted to compliment everybody that put together and participated in the pedestrian and bicycle master plan, PEMP as it's known, and I think it's a really good piece of work, and it does a great survey of all the needs that are in our community around both pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure. The one criticism I have about this plan is that it's not really a plan because it's just a survey of all of our needs, and it doesn't come down to and get to these are the highest priority ones, 1, 2, 3, 4, and here's how much they cost, and here's how we're going to implement them. That part of the plan isn't here yet, and I'm wondering, Mr. City Manager, when and how we're going to get to that. I think this total list here is like, what, 120 years worth of work or something like that.
Rob's here. Read.
We will be initiating a process with the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee to prioritize the projects listed in this document. We think that this document is more flexible if we're listing the projects, and then we can use the priority list as a BPAC working document so that we can go through that on an annual basis or biannual basis and use that to apply for grant opportunities and also to prioritize our workload when pavement preservation projects and other projects come up where we can implement components of this plan.
Right, because we may add funding for this in the next road fund bond, and we're asking for $2 million from the feds for this particular plan, and I would like to know if we got $2 million, what would you spend it on? And you answered my question. So if we can get to that as soon as we can, it'd be great. Thank you.
Would you introduce yourself to the public so they would know who
My
you are?
name is Reed Dunbar. I'm the Associate Transportation Planner.
Thank you very much. Counselor Farr.
Thank you, Councilor Zelenka touched on it. Tonight we approved our federal priorities list, which included a $2 million funding of the pedestrian master bicycle plan. But beyond that, the city continually looks to improve our pedestrian bicycle plan. This is just one step along the way that we're doing this evening. I look on the federal priorities list. We have $1.5 million for the Jessen Path Beltline to Terry Street, which is in northwest Eugene. So we're continually looking at bicycle paths all over the city, and I'm really pleased to say that it really is all over the city. It's we tend to take a look at the beautiful paths downtown, the Alton Baker Path and the Fern Ridge Path, but you really are stretching things to the very edges of the city, and I'm very pleased and proud of the work that you're doing.
I'll just take a moment to add to that some of the most innovative work that's been happening close to campus, and the what do you call it? What do you call the bikeway on
We're officially calling it a buffered bicycle lane, although cycle track is probably a little easier to say.
Anyway, you can tell how much people are enjoying it, and as I recall from hearing Sue Walling talk about it, one of the biggest desires of the community is for people to be in lanes where they're not competing with cars. So that's a really good first step here. So thank you very much. And I think we're ready to vote on this one. Would you please vote? Mm-hmm. 6 in favor and none in opposition. It passes. Thank you. And thank you. Okay, next item up, an ordinance to redesignate and rezone the Rexius site. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. This action item is for a proposal to amend the Metro Plan diagram of the zoning map. The property commonly referred to as the Rexius site, located south of West 11th, between Bailey Hill Road and Wallace Road Street. This request would change the plan designation to zoning for 27.9 acres of the 40-acre site from light medium industrial to a combination of low-density residential, medium-density residential, and commercial. Consistency with the required approval criteria is as Exhibit C in the package. But also note that the planning commission voted unanimously to recommend approval.
Thank you. Council President, you put a motion on the table. Do you want to ask questions first, or wait until after you get the motion?
Mayor, it's more of a comment.
Okay.
Then I'll make the motion.
Okay.
I mean, this site's going to be put to great use, much more beneficial use, except I just want to say that I'm actually very sad that Rexius is moving up to Junction City, because I'm a frequent, loyal customer for many years, getting their soil amendments there in bulk. It's a great service, and I just have to go a heck of a lot farther to get there now. So, but it'll be put to very beneficial use. So, the motion.
Yeah.
All right. I move to adopt Council Bill 5065, an ordinance to redesignate and rezone the Rexius site by amending the Eugene Springfield Metropolitan Area General Plan Diagram and amending the Eugene zoning map, City Files MA 11-2 and Z 11-4.
And?
Second. Thank
All
you.
right. Moved and seconded. Councilor Zelenka.
Question, Steve.
Thank you, Mayor.
One of the things that we're doing here is we're creating a zone of R1, R2, medium and low density residential that is adjacent to industrial property. And that isn't true right now. So we're changing it to create that circumstance, which is very uncommon in the city of Eugene, where we put residential and industrial together. And I'm wondering if we're not setting ourselves up for problems down the future, or is there a way that we have in our system and codes to do a buffer mitigation around that so that those two things don't conflict? Because I can see down the road, 15 years from now, this gets developed as residential, and all of a sudden you have these residential people go, what are all those industrial people doing over there? Which has happened over and over again. And, like the people who built houses across from the waste treatment plant and said, how could they put a waste treatment plant there? And it's been there for 30 years, 40 years. So how do we deal with that, with our system and our processing?
Yes, my name is Steve Oakes with City Planning, and I think in this case it'll be handled in kind of a reverse fashion. The residential property actually will have the PD overlay, and so it will, at the time it's developed, need to show how it's harmonious and compatible with the industrial site, which I think you could look at it then of maybe staying a little back further from it. Otherwise, the site is relatively small also, the remaining industrial sites, about 3.5 acres. And they also have separate access onto Wallace. They wouldn't necessarily have to increase traffic to the residential area. So, but you're correct, it is shifting the border of where residential is now to against that industrial site.
So how does that residential zone property do what would show that they're compatible with the industrial, which is, it depends on which side of the zoning fence you sit on, I suppose.
Right, and so they'll have to go through the PUD process, and so a hearings official will actually have to look at the development plan and confirm that it is compatible with surrounding development. The site that is industrial would currently, if it develops with new development, would need to be set back 20 feet and provide a screened hedge, but that would be the limit of the development.
And that's I-2 and not I-1 there, so it's lower intensity industrial, right?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Pryor.
Thank you. I would plan, and sorry I am to see Rexius leave this site because that's just a short drive for me to come and drop my stuff off and pick up my bark, but I will visit them at their new location and be really glad to see this development. I am incredibly pleased to see this for a number of reasons. One is it's entirely consistent with the work we have already been doing in terms of thinking about what's going to redevelop and what's going to happen along West 11. I think this is exactly the direction this is going in, turning from industrial into more multi-use. This is a great mix, a combination of different things. I'm hopeful that this is just the opening of what will be the gradual transformation of this entire area. So I'm really glad to see this begin. I think it's a wonderful thing. I don't view this as losing Rexius. Rexius still owns the site. Rexius will still develop it, and I will visit Rexius for my gardening needs at a different location. So for me, it's a win-win, and I think it's a tremendous thing to do, and so I'm fully supportive.
Councilor Farr.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to point out that Rexius is one of the true examples of a homegrown miracle, really. This is a homegrown company, and the type that we... that wasn't even intended to be a pun.
No pun intended.
Sorry.
But that we look to homegrown companies, companies that originate in Eugene, to grow and continue to hire and continue to employ Eugenians. And while Rexius is moving, it certainly is a more appropriate use for the site. And I've been assured that in true good neighborly fashion, Rexius has done every single thing that they could possibly do to keep as many jobs inside of Eugene as possible. And while the main earth and bark facility is moving, many of the jobs are actually going to be staying in Eugene, and that really makes me proud of Rexius, not only as a Eugenian, but as just watching a local grown company thrive and make sure that Eugene stays as strong as we possibly can be. Thank you.
Councilor Zelenka.
Almost tempted to leave it at the homegrown miracle, but
I was more than I could take.
Yeah, I can't think of a better use for this site, or a more appropriate use for the site than what's going on there right now. I think than have this turn into residential and commercial properties. I think this is a really good plan. You answered my questions about how do we prevent some conflicts in the future. Hopefully we will do that. And I can't think of better stewards for the development of this property than the Rexius family and Rusty. So I'm all in favor of this, and if there's anything we can do to help you redevelop it and make it a great part of the city of Eugene, let us know.
Okay, having listened to the miracle statement and other things, I'll just go right on punning away and say we wish you the sweet smell of success.
Okay. Ready to vote? Please vote. Well, it's Spartanburg Development. Oh, there we go. 6 in favor, none in opposition, it passes. Okay, all right, we're done here. All right, last action item of the evening is an ordinance concerning permitted overnight sleeping and amending permitting overnight sleeping. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. This item is to consider the future of a temporary amendment to ordinance 4.816, allowing tenants to confine their vehicles for purposes of parking. December 20th, the council decided to temporarily amend the ordinance to allow tenants to confine their vehicles for purposes of illegal car camping. This is done to increase legal camping opportunities for those displaced by the closure of the occupied season camp that want to use parking. This amendment will sunset on April 15, 2012. That was going to hand out to you an amendment to what's in your packet. The reason why is that the amendment in your packet actually extends it indefinitely. My recommendation is to extend it to the end of this calendar year, primarily because currently there are 2 residents that are campers or that are using tents right now. Our thinking is that we'd like to use tents that are 8 or 9 months reflecting information like that. I see the bit of a pilot come back to you for this fall, and then we may want to make some changes as back to that. What you're being sent out is my recommendation to the supplement of the one that we just sent out.
Is this a substitute for it? So do we need to make a different motion than? Adopt an ordinance, the line in bold. It's the header on the, got it. So we want to do that?
I've got a question first.
Okay.
Does the current ordinance that only covers cars, does that have a sunset date on it? I can't remember. I didn't. The current ordinance, the one that we're amending, that only covers cars, does that have a sunset date on it? It's permanent, right?
About tents only. Is that correct? Yeah.
I understand that. But maybe I'm not expressing it well enough. But I mean the one that just covered cars before we added tents to it. Did that have a sunset date, or was that? That's just code. I see. Okay. Okay. Could you explain the rationale one more time for putting a date on it rather than just not having a date on it?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'm Michael Wiss from Community Development. Staff is recommending an extension of the amendment through December 31st of 2012 to understand the long-term feasibility of including tents defined as vehicles for the purpose of car camping. At this moment, we have been slow to add new sites, and we have 2 current tent sites at Community Alliance of Lane County. We still do not know the long-term effects of changing the definition to tents, and we'd like a better cross-section or sample size before we recommend a permanent amendment to the ordinance.
Yeah, okay, yes, I understand that, but it may be a moot point because there may not be sites available to put tents on. There's that possibility. but also it's sunsetting right in the middle of the winter, right in the worst possible time of the year. And if we want to put a sunset date on it, I think it should be, well, I mean, you see what it's like out tonight, like end of March or something like that. I suppose we can always take it up again, before December 31st and
Right, and
extend
also
it again, and either then decide to make it permanent or extend it again. So
we would definitely
maybe it
bring
doesn't
forward,
really matter. But
this date also coincides with St. Vincent's expansion of the program. The contract will be ending at that date also, so it seemed to be a good time to revisit this in advance.
Okay,
of that date.
yeah, okay, I see the reasoning there. That makes sense. Thank you.
So you want to put this substitute motion up?
Yes. Just read this part here.
Yep.
This part.
Yep.
Okay. I move to adopt an ordinance amending Section 5 of Ordinance Number 20484 to extend the sunset date to December 31st, 2012.
Second.
We've been seconded. Councilor Zelenka.
So the way I understand this is that back in December, we did a temporary exception to the camping provision to allow tents. And in that, there was a sunset of April 15th. And then in Section C here, we have the extension to December 31st, 2012. Got that right? Okay. So, actually, I'm in favor of just leaving it as originally proposed in Attachment A, which just leaves it permanent. If we wanted to come back and tweak it later, we could do that without a sunset. So, I remain to be convinced why we need a sunset. Is that just a mechanism to bring it back?
Coming back, I think from our perspective, there isn't enough information to add. So what we do is go through the technical way of collecting that data with the next month, so and the site, more campers and campers who use the site. It would bring that back to instead of December 31st, obviously, we would want to and you'll just have more information which will base the decision to the program itself will continue on, bring it back to you, and it will take off any sunset. So we don't interrupt the facilities at that time, the facilities will be expanded. So it's just being able to provide back further data after the program is in place.
So it builds in a mechanism to have the feedback loop on how the program's going for us, and before that December 31st deadline, we could extend it permanently or modify it or do something, which we could do regardless, but this is maybe an easier mechanism. Okay.
Probably the difference of this is that you could do it, except this will bring it up.
This will force it.
Right.
Right.
It just won't go on, and we won't look, So. And
adding more work here.
You finished? So I guess I'd like to make one comment because of what we heard during the community forum, and just want to recognize that none of us thinks a tent camp will solve our homeless issue or is ideal for most people to live in. So this is just a step to try to be more helpful than having people totally unsheltered. So that's why we're doing this. We don't have any notion that this is will solve the problem we have to wrestle with here. Councilor Ortiz.
Thank you, Mayor. I think what I'm hearing, John, from you and from Michael is that the contract with St. Vincent de Paul is up at the end of the year also? Is it up for review?
The extension following the closure of the Occupy Eugene camp that was granted to them.
So the car camping that St. Vincent de Paul monitors and manages at this point, is that contract up at any time?
There's actually two contracts. St. Vincent's annual car camping contract is up in August.
Mm-hmm.
This extension, which was granted in December, actually runs through the calendar year. So their standard annual contract is up for renewal in August.
Okay, and so what my hopes would be is that whatever data you gather from this will fold into their contract. And that is why I think I'm going to support the motion for the sunset, because I really want to hear if it's, continues to be valid or not for us to do that. And hopefully we will come up with other answers or have some other mechanism for folks who are houseless.
Councilor Farr?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm, of course, going to support this, and I agree with the mayor that it's just a small thing that we can do as far as the entire homelessness effort. We hear the wind howling around us out here right now, and tents don't keep people dry, as was stated earlier. But that being said, I do want everybody to remember that Eugene has a long and rich history. Rich is not quite the right word, but a long history of providing homeless services dating back to 1947, and we can look at a long list of the chronological history of homelessness efforts in Eugene. We really certainly lead the nation in our efforts, and while we aren't coming even close to solving the issue for people who would rather not be homeless, who would rather not be out in this tonight, we do more than most people do. And if somebody is critical of Eugene, they need to take a look at the document that states how much the city of Eugene has, how much effort the city of Eugene has put in since 1947, all the way up until last week. In fact, even this morning, to take care of, to help alleviate the homelessness issue. So thank you, and please remember that we are doing the best we can with the limited resources, and we are always looking at innovative new ways to do a little bit better, much as we're doing tonight by passing this ordinance.
We're ready to vote. Would you please vote? 6 in favor and none in opposition. It passes. And with that, we are through with the work of the evening. Thank you all. Oh my gosh, it's windy.